Back over at the Rottler F69 here in the shop, Stroud Technologies, Project Pontiac. Time for an update. Lake, what do you see with our block here?
Well, obviously before it was laid on this way, now it's standing up.
There it is. There's your update. Project Pontiac.
No, what we can see that's already been done is they've already decked it. They mentioned before maybe that the bore size, it had already been bored. So the block had been bored, so they didn't need to do that. So they can just go straight into the hone after the rest of the block work's been done. But as they were measuring it using the power of the F69, they noticed something about the cam tunnel.
Yes.
Which was?
Well, Dave Bullock told me he had never seen one that was more out of, I guess, plumb,
alignment.
Out of alignment, 037 out. We're going to increase the cam diameter to 55 millimeters, so we're able to straighten it all out and make it perfect, which is super exciting. But that's exactly where we started. Back in the day, it would be like you make the holes that are there and you surface them.
Yep.
Now you make them right and you make it perfect. And it's just so exciting to see that the machine measures it, tells you what's wrong, and then enables you to fix it.
Yeah, this is going to be nice because it takes time to do the block work correctly. So it's where we're at now. Now that they've surfaced it and done that, now we're staying it up. They're going to begin and index over here, open this one all up, then they'll flip it over, do the other side, then they can come in. This can have a right angle drive. We'll then finish the rest of the cam bearing so that it's dead straight, right size, right alignment, and that's the whole key. You got to keep this center to center, which we'll talk about a lot tomorrow because there's a whole segment with the Dortons and everybody else where we really get into detail on cam to crank alignment and the proper way of doing all this. So don't worry, we're just kind of mentioning it now. Tomorrow there's in-depth tutorial showing you how this machine can do it and do it right. But this is the backbone, right? You got to get this part right so that the engine's going to do for you what you want it to do. Well,
and that brings me to the genesis of this whole deal. We sent the engine to Gary Stinnett. We ran it on his dyno. It made 603 horsepower with the old cast iron block, and we were pretty excited.
Yeah.
And then he takes it apart and finds all these cracks. Now, the cracks came from one, making 600 horsepower in a 3,300-pound car using factory location side motor mounts without a motor plate and a mid plate. All that flexing. But we didn't know what we didn't know back in the day. The problem is, now everybody is in on the deal. And what do? Do I go to a junkyard and find another old cast iron block? Don't get me wrong, we had the Nunzi billet main caps on it, and we had all that. Do we just build what we had before again? Well, we thought about it. And actually, that's the direction I was going to kind of go until Keith Jones from Total Seal was like, Joe, let us make some calls. And I was like, okay. So Keith called the folks at All Pontiac, which are located right around the corner from Total Seal in Arizona.
Right.
They had this block, and I was able to acquire it. So that was exciting. Called Gary Stinnett, Stinnett Automotive, 4-time world champ, by the way. Foggett on board. There's Foggett all over this place. He was so happy because now he could really do something with it. He's not using old factory OE parts that may be good or may not be good. And you can see in the All Pontiac block, they've really solved a lot of the problems.
Oh, this thing is a beautiful piece. I mean, it's really nice.
It has changed what are, and the word you said, Gary had said, the foundation of your engine. And that really enabled some others to come on board, like the folks at Edelbrock, Mark, who has been here at the Engine Performance Expo. In a conversation, he's like, we can get some Edelbrock cylinder heads for this thing. So now it's going to have aluminum cylinder heads, which is very interesting to see how it's all going on. The fact that so many people, John Gaydosh, well, you got aluminum cylinder heads. John Gaydosh ran Pro Stock for many years, but a lot of people don't know Pontiac is his area of expertise.
I didn't know that. How about that?
He had been developing ports and runners on Edelbrock aluminum cylinder heads for many years, and he had the CNC program. He's like, Joe, send me the heads, okay? Got the heads, sent him the heads. The heads got ported by John Gaydosh, and he's like, John, no, I want to help. I want to help you, Joe. I want to help you. It's so amazing, right? And just along the line, people, my friend Charlie Kababi at home, South Florida, local Pontiac guy, you guys at Total Seal, of course, Gary Stinnett and Steve Williams, everybody has been so helpful to try to keep this project going. And it's been amazing to see. Of course, Chris Stroud calling me up, hey, we want to machine the block here in Piney Flats at the Engine Performance Expo.
Right.
And you know, I feel like a race car driver at the top end of the racetrack that just won a race and is trying to think of every single person that has helped to this point.
Yeah.
It's been amazing.
Well, then you got one really special phone call out of this as well.
So I'm working on my streetcar in my driveway, my dad's driveway at home, and I've got the rotors off. I'm putting new rotors on the front of my car, and my phone rings. And everybody knows when you see a number that you don't know who it is,
you don't answer it.
Most of the time, you don't answer it because you know it's not who you. But this time, for whatever reason, I decided to answer it. And who is it but Mr. Pontiac, John Callies, who is not here this episode,
but he's
we
been
wish
here
you the
for all
best.
the previous ones.
I'm sure he's out there watching right now. And he's like, Joe, John Callies. And I'm blown away. Hello, John. How are you? I hear you're building a Pontiac. I'm like, how'd you hear about that? Yes, we are. I would love to send you some lifters for this project. And I'm like blown away again. I keep saying it over and over again, like just with emotions and happiness and stunned. And
you end up not just with an awesome Pontiac block, but you've got John Callies providing a set of Morel lifters.
Morel lifters are going into Project Pontiac. And it's amazing how everything kind of just all ties together, Lake.
Yeah, so the great part is it's not just taking that factory block in factory heads and trying to upgrade it. We're starting with all the best stuff. And the neat thing is, here at the Engine Performance Expo, you never know who you might see next. As you can probably see in the background, there's tons of people here.
Yeah.
There's engine builders from all over the place. And that's the great part about the Engine Performance Expo is that it brings together people from different backgrounds, different experiences, from manufacturers to engine builders to machinists, and they all come together and they share ideas, and that's how things get really great, how the collaboration really kicks off. In fact, there's a king right there. You may catch him as you walk by, right? There's all these incredible people. They gotta close the door so they can keep on doing their work back there because they gotta machine Joe's block. Because hopefully tomorrow morning that block is in the H85, so we can begin to hone it, so it can be finished, so we can send it to Gary Stennett, so he can finish the engine, so that this man's products can actually go in the block.
Incredible. Hidden horsepower here at the Engine Performance Expo at Morel.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Same here, sir. This is so. Obviously, we were just talking about John Callies, a mutual friend of all of us.
Right.
And John's been here for all the years. John's a great guy.
Yes, he
and
is.
so y'all have been partners in this lifter thing for a while, right?
Yes, John got involved early on, and John really grew the business. You know, I'm an engineer, own a machine shop, pretty talented, I feel, at engineering and machining and design, but not a marketer by any means. And John, you know, got involved, and the business just exploded. I mean, as soon as John got involved, I think I've been behind ever since with my orders.
There you go. Put you behind.
Yeah. Which is a great thing in manufacturing because, you know, the company started, it's a gear shop. It's a pretty large gear shop, and we do stuff for Cummins, we do stuff for Macy Ferguson, Danfoss sour pumps, which go to Bobcat. They go, you know, high tolerance, low quantity, very precise stuff. So when I got involved with John, we felt that there was a big opening in the performance market because the customers, the cam companies and the customers didn't really get treated like we have to treat a Cummins engine.
Right.
You know, you have one part out of 100,000 that's bad, you got the red light and you're getting booted out if you get two.
Right.
You can't be late.
Yep.
You know, the quality's got to be there. The support, you have to have decent pricing. So we felt there was kind of a market for a high quality lifter that we can use our engineering on. Mm-hmm. You know, it's fun for me making industrial parts to somebody else's print was challenging and sort of fun. Making stuff to your own design is a blast.
Way more fun, right? Yeah.
Way more fun, especially when it works.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, it's a plus when it works.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know the Black Mamba lifters you guys make, you guys helped us out with my dad's engine, And that thing is incredible. That valve train just sings with those. And we also have them in the Engine Performance Expo LS. And we've turned that thing way over 9,000 RPM. It just sings like a sewing machine. It's an amazing product.
That's good to hear because, I mean, it's pressure lubricated, as you know. And it can handle a terrific load because it doesn't have they call Hertzian stress.
Right.
So it's got the oil wedge in it, basically like a crankshaft, and look what a crankshaft can do.
Well, that's the key point for people that maybe not understand. You think, well, that needle bearing, that's solid, that's got to be better. But like you just said, what happens is with that needle bearing, you have that point of contact, and that stress is extremely high. If you've been watching all day, you saw Billy Godbold and Mark Malberg at the whiteboard saying, where does the failure happen? It happens at that highest stress point. So needle bearings themselves create that stress point.
Correct.
So if you can eliminate that, you take that away, that fluid film bearing is better.
It's everything.
Yeah.
Right. The loads go way up, the longevity goes way up. I mean, it's definitely the way to go. It's not for everybody. Can't restrict oil to them.
No, yes. It has it like everything, right? There's a price to pay for everything.
Right.
There's a pro, there's a con to everything. But if you can make it work in your system, it works pretty great. So
I tell people, I said, you wouldn't put restrictors in your main bearings, would you? So let's not do it
not for very long.
My lifter.
So Ed, let's do what we typically do on Hidden Horsepower, and we started with John Callies joining the company, but your earliest signs that this was going to be the field that you were going to go into.
Engineering, you mean?
Well, engineering, being mechanically inclined, designing, developing, thinking, I want to know how this works. Why does it work? How can I make it work better? When did you know that was the road you were going down?
That's pretty interesting because it started until I was about 9 years old. I wanted to be a garbage man.
Okay.
So, I mean...
Admirable. We need them.
Picking garbage out, finding motors and bike frames, that was fun. And I have a good friend that I've known since we were 5 years old, and his dad was an electrical engineer. And you remember, I don't know, you guys are kind of young, but they had the little Stingray bikes.
Oh, yes.
And
Schwinn made those, by the way.
Right. Schwinn made them. And Gary got one real cheap, and his dad welded the head on it. And not only could Mr. Wise weld, he built the welder.
Wow.
So I'm like, he was a double E, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I think I want to be an engineer because this guy is so cool.
Yeah.
So, it did the typical stuff that we did. And, John Callies and I were talking,
You need to explain to everybody that doesn't understand how important it was to weld the headset on your Schwinn Stingray bike.
It was broke. They put rake in it, and it wasn't really up to snuff.
Only of us who had those old bikes knew what would happen with
that. You come down from a wheel stand. There was a little chopper. It looked like a little chopper with a 3-speed shifter on it. It was the bike to have. I mean, if you were a kid and you had one of those, and then you ended up with a Rupp mini bike, then you were a rich kid.
Oh, yeah, Rupp,
basically.
That's out there.
So, it did the typical things that we do when, we grew up in the 50s and 60s, is slot cars and mini bikes. And, I'd go down to the Nike site, if you remember the old Nike sites, and they allowed us to run our mini bikes up and down. And then I go and I get blown into the weeds by a guy, so then I bring the thing downstairs and I take it apart and I'm reading some magazines and they're talking about relieving the head and doing all this. So I'm grabbing my dad's woodworking tools and screwing them all up. I got his drill, and I'm porting it and I'm doing all kinds of things. And my mom comes down and goes, oh, yeah, it'll never run, right? Well, I went there the next week and, then that guy was behind me. So it's just fun, and if you feel it's fun to go into it. And I went into engineering, mechanical. I started as a double E, and they're talking about, well, the pressure in the pipe, volts is like pressure in a pipe. And, how much water goes in, is watts. And I'm like, why don't I just do the water and the pressure in the pipe thing instead of the volts and amps and, So, went to engineering. started at Gear Company. The owner then told me, totally true, you really don't know anything just because you got an engineering degree. But what you proved by that, and I'll never forget this, is you have the ability to learn that type of thing. So right away, I became a pretty good asset there. I built a whole screw machine department and did a lot of fancy attachments. And it's a gear shop. And we were doing that. Well, the previous owners always wanted their own product, but they never wanted to spend the money on it. You know, you got to make it and hope it sells, right? It's like growing the corn and you better sell it. Well, when I got to ownership, which is like 35 years ago now, something like that. I mean, I've been there 45 years.
Which I hear is a story unto itself.
It sounds like it. Yeah.
Which one?
You'd be acquiring ownership.
Right. You start off as an employee, you end up as the owner. That doesn't happen every day.
Right.
We'll get to that. Continue.
Yeah. So, you know, basically I said, this roller lifter thing is fun. It uses a lot of engineering. It uses the, bearing technology, all the bearings, materials, all stuff that I got real good at in a hurry. And what I love about our marriage in the Morel Gear Company venue is I'm exposed to the latest and greatest of a Sauer Danfoss, billion-dollar companies, a Caterpillar, what's on their prints, how they're checking it, why they're doing it. So a lot of that technology finishes. I mean, talk to the engineer over, at Cummins, why are you doing that? Well, the bearing area. Well, why? It runs in a bushing. I'm like, oh, Shazam. I said, it's the same thing, an idler, high pressure idler gear is the same thing as a roller lifter in reverse.
Okay.
So you're exposed, why you got this material. It does this and this. So that's where I feel like we really had the edge because you're exposed to so much other stuff. It's not just you and your group trying to come up with stuff. You have the
idea exchange
world.
Yeah.
And so, there's some sharp guys in some of these big companies, even though, I'm not a big company guy, I'm a little company guy.
Yeah. But that's like we were saying we were walking in here, is that's what makes the Expo so special. It's that exchange of ideas, because you get guys coming from drag racing, circle track racing, and NA, Boost, and people outside like Mark Malberg, who comes from outside the racing industry, that came from Cummins, and you get all that.
I sat next to him last night.
Interplay, right? When everyone starts to get together, that's where we all get smarter together by sharing and exchanging. But the one common element is everyone has that passion and that drive to be better, not just to be. Well, it runs. That's okay.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't what this is about, right? We don't do this because it works.
No.
We want to make it better.
Right. And the stuff's constantly changing. And usually what we've tried to do when you come out with something, we kind of followed the Corvette, how they do the Corvette. The first year, the new body, it never has what horsepower they know they can make, right?
Right.
And they don't have a convertible.
Not yet.
So they have their 3 or 5 year plan to keep improving your stuff. So when we come up with something, we try to kind of think, because everything gets copied.
Yeah.
The Chinese are always trying to copy our stuff. Other people are trying to copy it. So if you have some kind of an idea where you're going to go with it, you can kind of at least have a moving target. So when they come up and copy your stuff, it's obsolete.
Yeah, the next one's already in pipeline.
But that goes right in with, and we work with NASCAR. We've been a supplier for Hendrick Motorsports for a long time now. And the information you get from those folks is just invaluable, because they really, you send stuff to a fuel team. And this is truth. I mean, it'll come back, a 5-gallon bucket sometime with pieces of pistons and everything, and taped with racer's tape, and say, can you go through these? And you get stuff from NASCAR, and it comes back, and you better not mix it up with your new product, because you can't tell the difference. I mean, how they treat this stuff. I mean, it's like, whoa, don't move them,
Yeah.
So the information you get, those guys are some smart guys. I mean, you go and you watch TV, and you see 9,200 RPM, and then you see it's singing up there, and you're going, yay. It's a lot of movement, right?
And they're like, that's nothing. You should have been around when you were turning flat to Episode 11.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's a piece of cake. Should be run all day right there.
Right. So
you know, which, I hear there's some stories about something running all day, all night, that in the early days of this lifter thing, you had some stuff going on with IndyCar. Like, where's the origin?
Oh, yeah. The IndyCar thing was started with John Reed, who I met through Norton, Rick Norton. We were cutting some gears, and he introduced us to Reed. And the Buick V6s were super hard on the exhaust because of the turbo. You know, turbo is kind of turbo's been around since the 40s, but in the cars, it was really kind of not that big like it is now.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting. So we made some prototypes, and they were basically a solid pin, cross-drilled, a bronze sleeve inside a bearing. So it was the easy roll lifter.
Okay.
That's all the rave here 10 years ago that we came out with in the 90s, right? So
for the Buick V6.
Right, for the Buick V6 for the Indy program. So this is kind of a cool story. So I'm in my 40s maybe, you know, pretty early 40s. And we're going to McLaren. Like, I had McLaren slot cars. Like in my day, you know, the McLarens were the car, Can-Am was the thing, and I'm going, you know, and Rick and I walk up to McLaren, and it's like, you're like a kid in a candy store, right? And we tell the girl, we're going to see Bernard Santivi. And she goes, oh, you better take a seat, because he's never on time. So we sit down, and she says, he's pulling in the parking lot. She goes, you guys must be important. So Rick and I go through there, and they're running like 10 Bintrons, and they're missing shifts and doing all the Indy stuff. And, you know, they're cranking this thing. And, you know, you hear them, and it's like, is it going to hold up? You know, it was just a real like kind of weird experience. You know, you're in there where your idols, those are the companies that were your idols.
Right, absolutely.
You know, like John took me to see Bruce McLaren, or not Bruce McLaren, Bruce Crowder.
Yes.
At his house.
Yeah.
Who gets to go to Bruce Crowder's house?
Yeah.
You know, so that's John. You know, he knows all those guys out there. So that was interesting. So
there's a little more to that story, that developing that lifter for McLaren for that their test had to run X amount of time.
Oh yeah, it has to run like 4 races or something. You know, it's a 500-mile race, and they got to run like 2,000 miles. You know, so it basically didn't wear out. I mean, they ran oil pressure to it, and it kind of felt like new. And that was basically a precursor to the Black Mamba.
Okay, that's where it all kind of originated there.
Right. But the Black Mamba, where it has the advantage over what that is, look at the pin size of it. Bigger pin. So we left the needles out completely. Instead of going with the stock, it was a 3/16 diameter pin and a bushing and the bearing. We blew the ID up and made it out of the bronze, so it runs directly, and that's all cross-drilled and everything, so it gets the flying wedge. So yeah, that's how that was developed.
And that was able to go from, hey, they could run like maybe a race, and the thing was...
They weren't even making a race when they were testing because of the boost. The exhaust
there was so much back pressure
was getting killed. So that was... And of course, do you guys remember what happened in that race?
If you're talking about Roberto Guerrero, well, so Kenny Bernstein, drag racer, had gone into the world of IndyCar, and they were on the pole for the Indy 500. And so, like, as a drag racer fan, like, this was a huge moment, the cross-pollination in the other direction. And it's sad.
Do you remember what happened?
Yeah, no, I remember. That's why I'm sad.
So what was the pace lap?
Left on the pace lap.
And they had everybody covered with probably 7 or 8 miles an hour. I mean, it was big. You know, in qualifying, and he's doing this, and I'm sitting in front of the TV there in Cleveland, and it goes, boom!
Yeah.
The race hadn't started, and I'm like, oh no.
No, does that, like, We shouldn't talk about it anymore. Kenny could be watching. We don't want to talk about it.
And did you hear the interview with Roberto afterwards?
Yes, but you can refresh my memory.
He says, what do you think? And he said, I thought I was in a dream and would wake up. So that, yeah. But it's interesting, you know, like, I don't know if very many industries where you can meet your idols.
Right.
You know, I'm here with Mike Valerio, and I remember being at Thompson, the dragway in Cleveland, you know, and being 10 years old with my buddy Gary and his dad, because he also took us to the drag strip. On the fence, here comes Canned Heat, and obviously those guys were kind of at a national level. They were match race Ronnie Sox, and so you know, but they were obviously local heroes, and now we're buddies.
Right.
You know, I stay at his house, he stays at mine. You know, Hutter was a friend.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think that's real common in industry. Our industry, it is.
Yeah, it is commonplace in our industry.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. I don't know about others, but yeah, that's one of the, I think, great things about our industry is how interwoven and tight knit that it is.
Right.
You know, a minute ago when Billy was talking about John Lingenfelter and his ability to get everyone to rally together to build a car that he's going to compete against you with.
Yeah.
But that's the way. I think that's part of the Rather ethic is that no one wants to get that trophy if you didn't race against anybody.
Right.
It only means something if if the competition is there.
Is there, right.
You know, so you want your other guy to get in the track. Well, here's the clutch, here's whatever it is. Get your car on the track so we can go have a real competition.
Right.
Because then we want to know what we have.
Yeah, we don't want to buy.
No,
we don't want to back through the door.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, and you can be in the industry for a long time, and you're here because you love it, so you're not going anywhere. Like executives have jobs, and then when they retire, they get out of there, or they get enough money, they're down the road, right? Because they don't love it. But you guys love it, and you want to be here, and you'd be working on something regardless. And so, of course, there would be some admiration to other people who love it.
Right.
And you recognize it. Like, man, this guy coming up, he wants it, loves it. He wants to be here. So did I. Let's help him. And I see that amongst racers, and I see it amongst the engine building community.
No doubt about it. So go back to that. How did you end up being the owner of the company? Because that's, again, not a normal story.
Yeah, and Mike told us to ask you, just so you know. He was pushing a broom, and then he owns the company.
Yeah, well, I wasn't exactly pushing a broom. You know, I got started there as an engineer, and it was interesting, too. I got hired as an engineer. 2 weeks later, the working maintenance foreman quits. And they tell me, wear your jeans and t-shirt, you're now the maintenance foreman. So I'm out fixing equipment that varies from 1940s to 1970s. And, you know, a lot of times you find out when you're the maintenance guy, it's not so much sometimes the machine, it might be the process, it might be the stuff in. So you learn, it's like a baptism by fire. And I, you know, became a pretty valuable asset, and the owners wanted to retire, and one bought the other one out, and I was in the process with him, and then he got sick and he passed away, and I bought his estate out, and here I am. So I mean, it's possible. I mean, I got some guys there now that, you know, like Billy and I were talking about the passion, you know. You have to let these guys, like I had 24 screw machines in there. That's what we made all our blanks on. That was after my maintenance thing, I built that department. We had 15 guys at there one time, and that was my baby. Well, you can't find anybody to run them anymore. It says on the paper I'm going to make 120 of those an hour, and at the end of the day, I got 200 in the basket. What happened to the rest 6 hours, right? Yeah. So you kind of go, all right, I got this new kid, he's 33 years old. You know, and he's like, you know, we need to try a CNC bar feeder. You know, I go, that thing only will do 25 parts an hour. You know, this screw machine will do 120. He goes, well, don't look like it's doing 120, Ed. And I'm like, okay, so you take the leap of faith for a couple $100,000 on a 33-year-old kid, and he gets the thing running, and he goes, I'm going to try it tonight with leave it run. You know, I'm old school. You better stand there in case something happens.
Right, yeah.
He says, that's pretty good. So he comes in, I come in the morning, and he's got 1,000, 1,200 parts, and he's checking them all, and they're all good, you know, and he's putting them away, and I'm like, oh. So about 4 months goes by, and he tells me, he says, I go, how's it going? And he says, this is the closest you're going to get to printing money. And I said, let's buy another one then. So now we got 2. But, you know, during I went to Europe for 16 days on a cruise, and I told Scott, my superintendent, I said, get rid of my babies now. I said, I don't want to be here when they're hauling them to the scrapyard. So I came back, and then they're gone. You know, it's kind of like, but motivating the younger guys, you know, if you have somebody that's motivated, you better give him enough rope, or he's going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, that, like you say, the job reward. You know, like, maybe next year I'll bring one of them here. You know?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a cool deal. There isn't one person out here I haven't probably talked to, and I liked every one of them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's no strangers in here. And it's very unique. This is my first year here.
Right,
You know, Callies used to come and represent me, you know, so. And I was trying to make stuff at the shop.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, no,
everybody
well,
needs parts.
hopefully, hopefully not your last as well. You're already talking about coming back. And no, this is a yearly thing, and it starts the year, and everybody sees each other and exchanges ideas and has a great time. And this is also very hard work. Keep that in mind.
Well, you guys are
We're
working very hard. I mean, I see that.
Well, I think it's interesting that one of the things I've been thinking about last couple of days is going forward, you know, be able to go to a shop like yours and talk to one of your guys and have a how it's made type segments. That's something we really haven't done here with the Engine Performance Expo. That maybe leave it in the comments if you want to see that as a viewer. Maybe that's something we could add is, you know, visiting some of the different companies that are involved in the expo. And, yeah, show us how you make things, because that's always interesting.
Yeah, sometimes.
What you can show, what you can't show.
Well, some of my customers want, you know, and I told the one at PRI, he wanted a shop tour, you know. And I says, well, I don't give smart people shop tours.
Yeah, my boss doesn't like it when I give
too
shop
hard
tours
to learn.
Yeah, he doesn't like it when I do that.
You know, it's like there's a lot of proprietary stuff that you do, and the way you press it, I mean, if I go through a shop, I usually learn a lot if a guy's giving me a good tour.
Right.
Because, you know, I see what's going on, different ways to check things, how they're doing things, you know, and it's like, that stuff's hard, and the competition's lightning good. You know, they're all good. You know, there's no back runners in this.
No, that's the other great thing is back in the day you didn't have availability of parts and you had to make things and be improvising on stuff. Now there's a lot of parts and the quality is very good.
Right. Which is, it's fun.
Oh, it's great.
I mean, my job became a lot more fun when I got into this. You know, it's just, well, you know, working with Austin Coil. There's another, you know, all right, Austin Coil calls me on the phone, and I'm thinking it's my brother screwing with me, right? You know, and she says it's Austin Coil.
This is the first time Austin Coil called you?
Yes, ever. I didn't know he was going to call. Steve Tansey gave him my number. He was with Urson. So, you know, I pick up the phone, and I go, yeah, because I'm thinking it's my brother. And I hear his voice. And he's got that distinctive voice you see on TV, and I'm like, ooh, it's Austin Coil. That's how we got into that top fuel lifter with the double roller.
Yeah.
That was invented by one of the guys that works for me. I did not invent that. I mean, he says, why don't we do it like a tag wheel on a cement truck? I'm like, what do you mean, Rick? He goes, well, put a wheel above a wheel. You know, three-quarter wheel, because the technology there wasn't there at the time for the material. And that's another exhaust valve problem. You know, Austin told me at the time they were opening the exhaust valve 86 degrees after top dead center, and roughly there was 10,000 pounds on the lifter because of cylinder pressure.
So great still because how slow the nitro burns and how early they were trying to open it.
Trying to open it, yeah. So that's you know, we made prototypes. I said, Austin, I don't even have bearings. I don't have a source. Sent me some crane stuff. I took it apart, used their stuff, but rearranged it different. Sent it to him, and he calls me and he says, we got like 75 years of crew chiefs looking at this, sitting on the desk, and can't believe we didn't come up with this. You know, at the time it was him, Bernie, I think Jimmy and Medlin, you know, and they're looking at it going, this is stupid easy.
Yeah, why do we think about that? It's like we spent a lot of time driving down the road. We've seen this like a billion times. Why did that never come to our mind?
Right.
You know, but so Tansy, that's another great guy too.
Oh, Steve, he's just, you know, first time, you know, I got my lifters now, and Tim and Chris worked for Nichols, and they were kind enough to let me in, so I'm standing in the booth, you know, and I have my pair of lifters, you know, and I'm like a kid in a candy store, you know. Everybody's got these giant displays, and I have a pair of lifters. And Steve comes up. You know Steve?
I know Steve.
Oh, my God. He comes up, and he kneels on the ground, and he goes, oh, God of lifters. You know, Steve. And I'm like, he's big as a Hulk, you know, and I'm like, oh, gosh, can't. But he's a great guy.
Yeah. Well, it just shows how small this world is again, right? It's you have great people in this industry, and everyone's trying to help each other. And like your product was solving a problem he had, so yes, he's like, thank you for solving my problem because I need this problem solved.
Right.
You know.
All right, let's solve a problem for our industry in that we need to motivate a next generation of young people to get into it. And we were just speaking with Jolie out there, and she's fired up about it, but not everybody is. And so, you know, what would you say to those young folks? I know that they're out there who see this as interesting or inspired like you were when you got your Stingray welded. And what advice would you give to that next generation who we hopefully see them come up and get involved?
It's not a greasy, you know, it used to be you worked in a shop, it was like you got looked on like, oh, you can't do anything else. They kind of had a connotation, well, why didn't you go to college? Well, these machines are sophisticated. These people know math. It's not as dirty as it used to be.
Right.
You know, sliding around on a screw machine was not a lot of fun. But these are talented people that are running these things, and you can make some money now. You know, if you can find a guy who'll come, show up to work, and do a good job. Part of the reason I think you're lacking the pool for the industry is the hobbies of the younger generation aren't the hobbies of the older. You know, if you're playing on the screen, you're not listening to a motor thinking that's the coolest thing. So, you know, and I don't know how you change the hobbies, but the connotation that you can't do anything else because you're a CNC machinist is totally wrong. I mean, my most respected guy in my whole plant is my tool maker. I mean, you know, to me, that's the top of the game.
Yeah.
A guy who can make a one-off, right, whatever you say, you got a sketch and you go, I want it like this. And 2 days later he goes, hey, boss. And you look and you go, how did you do that?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's talk about pride. I mean, if you can do something like that, you know, how did you get here, you guys? We all drove a car. You know, heart surgeon didn't build a car.
Right.
You know, you got here. Heart surgeon's got his place, but not everybody's a heart surgeon or an NBA player, right?
Right, exactly.
So.
Well, and it's good to see, and we hope that, and I think there is. Maybe it's not going to be the numbers, but it's not about quantity. It's about quality. The right people seem to find what their passion is, whatever it is, and it's our job to make it cool as we can so that the 10-year-old is motivated.
And the owners, you know, like if you get a guy with the lights on, you gotta have to recognize it.
Yeah.
You know, if you try to pigeonhole him too much and he really is that guy you need, he's motivated enough, he'll go somewhere else.
And that's great advice for the people who are already machinists and shop owners about how to manage that next generation too, which is something we should probably talk about a little bit more because there's got to be understanding both ways that things are a little bit different. Great episode of Hidden Horsepower. Ed, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
We appreciate it.
You calmed me down. I was pretty nervous here.
You did great, man.
Because I'm not a out front type guy. I'm like,
You're an old
You
pro
should-
with that.
No,
You're an old pro. You're
You
good.
should
Next
be.
year you'll be great.
You're a character, and that's what
Right.
that's what we love. We love people with character and people who are characters like this guy.
So guess what? We are in the home stretch. The end of the day roundtable is coming up right now.
Let's do it.
So thank you, sir, for being
All right,
with us
thank
here.
you.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for the lifters, Project Pontiac.
Thank you.
amazing, Amazing. What a day, what a day, what a day. Yeah, my brain is swollen. I've learned so much today. They told us, don't start cars. We are not going to listen.